Let's talk about Napoleon. Alan, what is the story of Napoleon?
Yeah. Well, if you don't know history, Napoleon was an up and coming general in the French army during just after the Revolution, as they're going to battle with England. And Napoleon, he the best thing you can say about Napoleon, he was a he was a brilliant military strategist, and but he didn't exactly like the battlefield, but because he loved France so much, he was there on the battlefield with his men, uh, opening the movie with a very horrific scene with a horse. Um, but as you know, Napoleon leads his armies to victory. People love Napoleon, and it soon becomes a tale of politics now, where the new rulers who are coming in are quickly ushered out, and eventually Napoleon and his brother and others decide that they need to take matters in their own hands, and he eventually becomes king of France. But behind all this, there's a woman played by Vanessa Kirby, Josephine. I got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Josephine. She she's a bit compromised, but Napoleon loves her, and much of the movie, along with the war and the battle scenes, is about this kind of love affair between him and his wife Josephine, and the things they do to each other, decisions they have to make against one another, and so that's basically the story of Napoleon here. I will say this about the movie. At the end of it, it was like I think I just admired the fact that I watched an epic movie, an epic military movie that I hadn't seen in a long time. But I think I just kind of resigned myself to saying, this would be a great movie to show high school students in high school, because it is historical. You go through every single battle. You go through his life. You get an understanding of what France was going through as a country and as a leadership. With this film, you get a lot of history. You get a lot of education. Um, but aside from that, the best I could say is I admire the film. I don't think I was blown away, and I think ultimately I wanted to be blown away, figuratively speaking, and it just didn't happen for me.
Yeah, I'm in two minds about this film. So the film is like the Cliff Notes version of the highlights of
Mhm.
Napoleon, of the history of Napoleon, his battles in Europe, his rivalry with England, and
And everyone else.
and everyone else, other countries as well. But like also kind of just going through the major battles. So structurally, the way the movie works is it's his Napoleon. It begins with his rise as a leader, this brilliant military strategist, and additionally, letters between himself and Josephine is also part of the structure. And it also, the film does a good job of saying, here's the battle. This is basically sort of setting the chess pieces of here's a famous battle that was fought. It doesn't cover all of the famous battles. I mean, the most famous among them probably being Waterloo.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is at the end. Yeah.
yeah, near the end. And what ends up happening to Napoleon, which was something that I wasn't aware of, I thought was really interesting. They kind of give you this little epilogue, but the film, it's like, I feel like it's compromised in the sense that, and when that's why I said Cliff Notes, it quickly goes through everything. So you've got these long drawn out drama scenes that get a little tiresome, and then the battle scenes are epic. The battle scenes, obviously, it's augmented by some um, computer graphics, but I mean, not only are the battle scenes epic, they're brutal and bloody. You talked about that opening scene where they take over this fort, which kind of actually cements Napoleon as a brilliant leader. He figures out, like, if we could only get rid of that fort that's being occupied, we would have access to we'd have access now to this port, right? Like, the fort was guarding the port. So he goes in and you see him rear up. This happens within the first 10 minutes of the movie. Okay. He rears up on his horse. The horse gets hit by a cannonball in the chest and explodes. it just explodes in a burst of blood. It's gory. When they use cannons on people, it's not pretty. They use cannons on people, and you'll see a ton of people get mowed down, and just like it's just filled with carnage. And what was interesting is the military leaders would always be in these tents, kind of they don't get their hands dirty. They direct the battle almost like a form of human chess. At least that's what I kind of felt as I'm watching it. It's like, well, we're going to do this, and we've got this army here. They're going to move in, and then this army is going to do this. It was almost like they were doing it politely and in a gentlemanly way, right? So the military leaders like are in effect playing a human video game or a human chess game, right? That's what it was, because you'd have like these, huge armies, and they would, oh, we're going to move this army in here, and this. It just showed what warfare was like, and I think did better than any movie I've seen. I believe the war scenes are incredible. There's this scene, and it's in the trailer, where this army is approaching them, and it looks like that they're in trouble, but they basically tricked this oncoming army into approaching them over ice, and all they do is shoot cannonballs and sink this army under the freezing water. It's
I mean, he's portrayed as one of these David and Goliath types, where it's small army defeats large army.
Yeah, it's really like that stuff I loved. And then the drama, I wasn't quite sure what they were like. A lot of it is political. He married Josephine, but Josephine was unable to produce an heir. And so there's all of the, and then there's the thing is, we were talking about this after, because you and I went to the same screening. Like when you look at movies like this, like Napoleon, or films, like set in Roman times, some people have like British accents who are not British, French. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix has no accent.
He has an American accent.
He has an American accent. Everyone else has a French accent. And then there's even, they deal with one of the guy, the Prussian army, the head of the Prussian army. What was that character's name?
No, I mean, look, I don't think they had French accents. I think they all had British accents. Which made battles between the French and the British weird. Because they all had the same accent.
Right. They have British accents. What am I saying? But it's like they do this in films about, set in Roman era, Roman or Greek. They always have like British accents. And I'm like, wouldn't they have, Latin accents, or maybe even make it Italian? I don't know. Like it's a choice you make. So Joaquin Phoenix has effectively an American accent, and everyone else has a British accent. And it just,
it's like Robin Hood.
It's like I almost would have, like, if you're going for authenticity, just have everyone speak French and have it be in subtitles. Also, the film is 2.5 hours long, and it felt like if it was going to be epic, which is why I'm not surprised that there's coming to Apple TV Plus an extended version of the movie, because I did feel like, isn't there more to this? I feel like it ends abruptly, even though it's like, okay, it's building towards a long 3-hour, it's an epic, so I'm expecting it to be a little longer. And it's 2 hours and 30-ish minutes. The running time of the theatrical version, but it felt like this was intended to be a much longer movie. So that's what I meant when we're getting like the cliff notes, like, here it is, the greatest hits of Napoleon, all the famous battles that you've come to love and enjoy. But so I'm in two minds, like,
I mean, I will say that the love story aspect of it, I mean, I don't think it earned it. I don't think it earned the ending that it was brought to it. It just, and I think a lot of that had to do with being rushed. And I also think it had to do with the fact that, it's just kind of the way Joaquin portrayed Napoleon. I'm like, and I just can't imagine that Josephine would actually fall in love with him based on everything she had gone through with him.
Well, effectively, she cucks him, and effectively is what
she does that a lot throughout the movie.
She does that a lot throughout the movie, and you're like, man, I didn't realize Napoleon was, kind of a pussy.
I mean, exactly. But and that again, that leads to the ultimate love story that occurs, and I'm like, I don't know that I actually buy this at that time,
because she ends up,
because it leans heavily into it.
Right.
I'm sorry to send you away, but I love you. I love you. I love
Yeah,
you.
exactly. So, because she ends up she cheats on him when he's away in Egypt, which I found all of that, like, I was more interested in the battles and whatnot,
Mhm.
but she's cheating on him while he's away, and he, scurries back to France, and he ends up being mocked. That I thought was really interesting, how, like, the French media, like, was like gossip about Napoleon was big in newspapers back then. It was a device, a storytelling device. It wasn't, like, overused, but I thought it was interesting that they were using like newspaper headlines as like a way to get that information across. Not in a spinning kind of cheesy way, but like he was being mocked in newspapers across France. They were just so interested in gossip. But the thing that I do admire about the film, it's the war footage. Everything involved in the war was
Mhm.
like every time it would get to like, oh, good, another battle scene. I was relieved because
Yeah.
the drama scenes that were between every battle, just every single one of them dragged on too long. So I'm in two minds about this movie. I love like the epic staging of these battles, and Napoleon is a film that like so other directors have tried to make. Stanley Kubrick famously tried to make a version of Napoleon
Mhm.
in the 1970s, which would have starred Jack Nicholson, and he had planned. There's a whole like the script exists, the script that Kubrick was going to use, and he had a lot of notes. He was going to hire the Romanian army to just restage epic battles. And the authenticity of that I thought was very well done. It wasn't sugar coated like, yeah, you've got bayonets, muskets, all these guns and cannonballs. These are your weapons and they're all used and you see the results of it. So,
Mhm.
um well, I would say like if you're say in high school and you want to learn about Napoleon, this is probably a good film to see. If you're a kid wanting to learn history, this is the cliff notes that will actually make it interesting to read about Napoleon.
Yeah.
But
And by the
I
way,
was
for all the people in the chat, yeah, it would be great for high school, especially an American high school.
yeah, in American high school. Wait, do they learn history in American high school? Or is
Well, the
it
ones that do, the ones that actually teach it. If you're like my teachers, we saw a lot of movies in history class,
yeah.
and I
So
and to the point, yeah, it wasn't necessarily accurate, but
yeah,
we got the point.
yeah. Also, I'll say
Definitely.
this at the end of the day, that Star Wars girl is actually in the chat. She says, "Was it good though?" Here's the thing: the the parts that I loved, I really loved. The parts that I liked or didn't like, I really didn't like. So it's a mixed review. I would say for me, like maybe a 6.5.
Mhm.
So it's still a recommend, but on the lower end of recommend because of
Yeah.
some of the flaws that we pointed out. It's possible that this longer version is better. That
or
actually
it's or it's longer.
I would
I
hope
mean,
it's
I'll
longer.
say this. I mean, if you have Ridley Scott and Joaquin Phoenix in your movie, I expected more.
Yeah, but do you
A
recommend the
bear. I'm with you. It's a bear recommend. I think for American high school students, it's a nice primer on Napoleon. But and I'm looking at the chat, and again, clearly, the chat knows more about European history than the two of us do. So
Well, that's fair. That's
yeah,
fair. Look, we were focused on uh I don't know. I loved
we were
learning
living history back when we were kids.
right, right. Well, I loved learning about the American Revolution, which
Hmm.
actually led to the French Revolution. In many ways, the American
Yeah.
Revolution inspired the French Revolution,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Like overthrowing monarchs. We're not going to go with the monarchy thing. Just because of your birthright doesn't mean you should be running a country. So there you go. Yeah, a mild recommendation from both Alan and I. And I will say the one thing that you really can't criticize, and the best part about the movie was the battle scenes. The battle
Mhm.
scenes are just epic, and it to me worth it for the ticket price.